All right, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Triple K podcast. And in today's episode, we got Elin from Roccat, or a member or a member from the community as a guest, and we're gonna go through these new Roccat releases and maybe a little bit of Rockat's history as well. But yeah, of course, we got Sogol as well. He's my longtime buddy in this podcast. So how have you been doing, Sogol, in the past few days?
Yeah, doing well. Trying to get my armory crate situation sorted, and once I got that under control, I'll continue working on those reviews.
All right, all right. All right, Elin. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background in the community? How did you get into peripherals and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure for me. Uh, my background is pretty much like 3 years ago, I guess, 3.5 years ago, something like that. I found the mouse review subreddit. I honestly don't even remember how specifically at least. And then sometime after, I bought a Corsair M65, and that was when the whole Final Mouse Air 58 hype started, right? All the lightweight mice trend started, and I was like, all right, I have a Dremel, right? I have a workshop, and there must be something to make this mouse lighter, right? And I started drilling holes and cutting pieces out and trying to make it clean, and then I posted that on the subreddit and met some cool people. Went on with the Mad Catz Red 1, actually, the very first one. I made like a 14-gram mouse out of it, and there was pretty big hype on the subreddit for a while. And that's how I met Recon Kill, Lucas. I don't know how many people know him. He made the first like wireless 3D printed mice, the FK2 wireless and so on. And that was when I got into the Discord as well. And got really hyped about this whole thing. I learned more about mice. I learned more about all of this. I don't even know what I found so interesting. It was just, I guess, finally a hobby after a while of not really having a hobby. And on that Discord, there was a Rocket representative I talked to a lot, and I live 1 hour away from the Rocket headquarters here in Hamburg, and I visited him, and I got a preview of a mouse. Pretty much, I became a beta tester there. Uh, then I become like we called it VIP beta tester. It was just pretty much me annoying the Rocket team every day about something that I found about their products, stuff that I would like to change, and so on. And then a second representative also joined the Discord, and I got to become like pretty much friends with him. And someday he just asked me, "Hey, look, we're looking for a product manager. Wouldn't you like to try?" So I got a date. Had to do some tasks, I guess, in the Rocket office, and yeah, that's pretty much how I became a product manager at Rocket. Now I'm doing mice and mouse pads for Rocket. So the Burst was my first product. The Kone Pro now is my second product. Um, and honestly, before the whole mouse review thing, I was working at the bakery. I wasn't even thinking about mice or even like any more interesting job, right? My my educational history isn't great. I quit school after 10th grade. Uh, I never really finished anything because nothing really was interesting to me. So I kind of found my dream here. Yeah, I hope
That's a really
that
interesting
sums it up.
story. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you kind of became interested in the peripherals more from the technical standpoint, not really from a gaming standpoint, or am I correct?
Yeah, not really, because I mean I was always a gamer, right? Even as a
Okay.
little kid, but I was always the more of the kind of guy that liked to like sit next to a friend and watch him play, right? And think about ways like how could you improve games. I was making up games as a kid, right? I mean, I think a lot of people did as a kid, like a lot of little gamers, but and then with hardware, I got into PC hardware, right? And I was thinking like, okay, why are things built the way they're built, right? That was always more interesting to me than the actual gaming. And so with mice, it was pretty much the same thing. Now I'm thinking about like how can you improve certain things? How can you look further? why are things the way they are, right? And with mice, there's so many little details that it's this never-ending adventure, pretty much.
What sort of games do you prefer typically?
That's a tough one. So for me, it's like with music, it really depends on my mood. But generally, I prefer shooters, like first-person shooters. I used to play a lot of Quake, Cube 2 Sauerbraten, Nexus. I don't know if that's so arena shooters, but also like Battlefield, Planet Sides, more of the more casual shooters, I guess. I'm trying Apex Legends recently, if I have the time. But I think my main game actually is Guild Wars 2, which is an MMO, right? So very, very different. So I just play whatever I feel like. I played Minecraft because it was fun, you know. As I said, I like gaming for me isn't I like the competitive aspect, but it's for me just like it's a part of the whole hobby, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
It's just part of the whole puzzle.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I mean, I listened to the podcast where you were as a guest. Shoot Many Andy's podcast. I think you were quite interested in the aiming community. Am I correct?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think there's so much to it. As I said, there's so much details on the mice, right? That's not just sensor and so on, but mostly shape. I mean, in my opinion, the industry has pretty much stagnated since like 2010. I mean, since then we didn't really have changes. Every sensor nowadays is good, you know. But now there's also the shape. So with the whole aiming community and aim trainers and everything, it's like looking into how does a mouse or how does equipment actually affect aim, right? How can you get more out of your equipment and so on, and the mindset of the aim community in general. I mean, apart from the toxicity, which is I think in any community, but apart from that, it's just really interesting to me, the whole idea of it, really.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, you kind of mentioned shape already, so let's go right to the deep end and talk about the first question. Is there any preference for you between Ergo and Ambimise?
Not really. To be honest, I mean, every mouse is ergonomic in one way or another. So, I mean, the separation between symmetry and asymmetry, I think, is the important one here. I don't really have a preference. So in theory, it's the asymmetrical mice, because I mean our hands are not symmetrical, but on the other hand, there's not really, in my opinion at least, not any like really really good asymmetric mice out there right now. There's very little shape wise that takes advantage of the shape and the movement of a hand right now in the market. Like even in the niche of the enthusiast community. So I just use whatever mouse I feel like. It's the same with games, right? As I said before, just whatever I feel like. I used a 2004 Diamondback for like 1.5 months now, just because it was fun to use. It was an interesting shape to me. It was just cool. Now I'm back to the Burst for some reason. I don't know why. It's just trying out different things, and sometimes there's a shape that I really like the wheelmouse optical, the WMO, that probably everyone knows. It's just a very cool shape to me. It's really fun to use. It's comfortable. It gives you a lot of range of motion still. The Naga, for example, as well, the Naga Trinity and Naga Pro, I really enjoyed.
Would you say between Ergo and ambidextrous that Ergo or designing an Ergo mouse is more difficult?
Yeah, so on a very basic level, yes, I think it's much easier to do a symmetrical mouse. You have to, you can get away with a lot more stupid things, right? Like extreme flares and so on. If you and then let's say in a right-handed asymmetric mouse, you do like a really big flare. This really big flare all of a sudden becomes the entire shape, right? The entire shape is based around that all of a sudden. If you do that in an ambi mouse, I mean, it's still very prevalent, right? But since you have them both sides, it kind of, I guess, balances it out, if that makes sense in any way. And then also taking into consideration the if you design an asymmetric mouse based on like the ergonomics of the human hand, there's a lot you have to take into consideration. With an ambidextrous mouse, obviously you always have to design for the human hand as well, but as I said before, you can get away with so many like smaller things that you can't with a like actual asymmetric mouse. And then also, if we talk about designing a mouse for mainstream, so for the broad market, manufacturing of an asymmetric mouse is much more difficult than of a symmetric mouse. There's a reason why ambidextrous mice are so much lighter. Usually, like the most lightweight mice on the market right now are asymmetric mice. It's just because of manufacturing as well. So I think that's also interesting to take into consideration there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the WMO. I mean, to me, the Roccat Burst Pro is like in a long time. It's the closest mouse to the WMO, but there is quite a bit difference still in terms of like hand feeling and stuff.
Let me get my WMO real quick. So I think the biggest difference is still the front. Whereas on the WMO, it kind of flares outwards by a little bit, and the Burst Pro shrinks in the front a bit, and you also don't have the rounded buttons. I think that's a really, really big difference already.
Yeah.
But generally, yeah, I agree. It comes very, very close. I mean, it's a bit stubbier, I guess, the Burst. But that was not even by intention. So
Yeah.
it was just the Burst. We try to do a shape that's just a good shape. I mean, at Roccat, we generally we focus a lot of time on shapes, focus a lot of time on ergonomic studies, and it was just what came out in the end, which to me is the more proof to the WMO that it's just a really good shape. I mean, if you separately isolate it from the WMO, create a shape, and it's supposed to be a good shape, and the Burst comes out, I mean, it's subjective, obviously, but still, yeah.
Do you prefer the WMO over the Burst Pro shape?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it's so for aiming, for just pure aiming, I prefer the Burst. But for like everyday use and long time use, I prefer the WMO because it's very comfortable to me, because it's just round. It just feels like something nice in your hand.
Is it the WMO hump like a little bit towards the middle of the mouse, whereas in the Burst Pro it's more towards the back a little bit?
No, but the end. So the Burst Pro on the back side ends a bit more abrupt. So the let's say the last centimeter or 2 centimeters, even, like, they drop off faster than on the WMO. Whereas on the WMO, it's like almost like a wedge towards the end. That's it makes quite a difference. The WMO flattens your hand out a bit more.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Big difference in hand feeling, although yeah. So let's talk about a little bit more about the Burst Pro. So how happy were you with the reception of the Burst? Would you have done anything differently if you had a chance?
Okay, let's start with the reception, because it kind of plays into that. So the reception is overwhelmingly positive. So I can't talk about sales numbers, but let's just say that I'm happy with them. Like, I'm very happy with them. That the feedback online and offline is great from everyone. There is a few nitpicks, obviously, but it's nitpicks. It's nothing major, which is always a good thing if you release a mouse. As long as there's nothing major, you already did one thing right. But there is this feedback about the clicks, for example, the switches themselves, the optical switches. And I think that's the biggest part. And to me, that's, I think, one of the only few things I would have done different if I could. It would have taken more time probably in development, would have taken more research. But I wish we could have done the whole optical switch idea a bit different, right? Razer already had this stereotype, let's say, that optical switches are bad with the V1s, right? They improved massively in V2s. I'm a huge fan of them. But with the V1s, it was like kind of this optical switches are mushy, right? And when the Burst released, we kind of did the same thing. They were mushy to a lot of people. And this is like, man, I wish we could have done this differently. Obviously now we have the time, and as time passes, we can develop them further. We're constantly working on them, of course, to improve. So I mean, in the future, you will see constant improvements of them. Even in the Kone Pro already, the clicks feel much better. Not because the switches are much different, but because we took them into consideration more. And then a more personal, more subjective thing is the whole RGB of the Burst. I think a lot of people like love it because it's just this transparency is something people really like. I just wish we could have like gone a step further and made it even better, right? Showed even more of it, showed even more transparency. Maybe I'm not a huge fan of RGB, but it's just, I mean, with the transparency, come on, it's like a 90s toy. It's just cool to me.
Yeah, it looks very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen. Excuse me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying that the Burst Pro clicks would be really stiff, and that's something I always yeah couldn't really understand, because on my sample they really weren't stiff at all. But when I got the Burst Core, I don't know whether it was left or right click, but one of them was really stiff and the other one was really light, right? So there seems to be at least above average variance. I don't know whether that's a common complaint.
Yeah, I mentioned that before. I think it was like the first batch, or like the first two batches. I'm not really sure, but there was a really big tolerance in some. So the sorting tolerance was too big. So that's something we changed, right? So if you buy a Burst now and it's like produced after the first few waves, the tolerance is much smaller. I can't really comment on if they're lighter or heavier because I haven't used. I mean, now I'm using a Burst, but it's really like early sample, and to me, this project is already so old that I forgot how the history of it felt, like of the Switch felt. So I couldn't really answer if they're heavier or lighter now, but I think generally they should be a bit heavier, just based on specs on paper. Which again is a thing I would like to change, right? The optical switches, it would be a huge improvement if you make them lighter, but also keep the crispiness. That's this balance. If you make them lighter, they become flat. They feel flat. If you make them heavier, you have like a bigger click, right? But there must be some compromise that you can kind of find, right, to have both.
Yeah, the middle ground is really hard to find. I mean, so yeah, I think that mostly premium click feeling is considered to be a little bit towards the heavy side, but then like for gaming myself, I like to tap firing a lot in games like CS:GO, so I spam click quite a bit, and I used to play a lot of MOBA, so light clicks are like, for me, I prefer much more like a lighter click that has a slightly tactile feeling. But yeah, so it's really hard to like please everyone because people seem to have this massive kind of difference in what they prefer in terms of click feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to me, I really like lighter switches. Honeywell's, for example, they are quite nice. But I'm not giving this up. I don't want to give this up. I wanna find a solution. Let's say to make like more people at least happy. So
yeah.
By the way, how difficult do you find it to sort of balance your own preferences with what the typical Roccat customer wants or possibly wants?
Yeah, that's I think the biggest part of the job that I had to learn really quickly. That like my own opinion, which sometimes it's pretty extreme, to put that against like a mainstream appeal. So there's a few things I've learned to manage this. First of all, market data. The numbers are always right. If the numbers say something is well received, people like it, people buy it a lot, then I can't say otherwise. The other thing I've also learned is just sometimes you just need to shut up, to just let other people talk, listen carefully, and then just try to figure out why they like something. Not just go, yeah, but why do you like 200 gram mice? That's stupid. But go like, okay, but why do you like them? Trying to figure that out. Try to figure out, is there maybe a reason that's valid, right? Is the reasoning valid enough that you can go, yeah, maybe we should do a 200 gram mouse. Just an example, but yeah, it's tough sometimes, and honestly, I sometimes get called out when I'm like going into the direction of like, but yeah, that's stupid. Like, well, Elin. But yeah, it's how to say. Yeah, it's something you can learn. It's just something you have to learn. Otherwise, you can't stay in that industry. I think it's not just for mice, right? I mean, imagine designing a car. You can't just, like, as a designer, you can't just go and design your dream car, right? You have to hit certain specifications. You have to hit certain goals and so on. If I had 10 years, I could probably make the almost perfect mouse, but I don't have 10 years. I have a year, right? So these things just help. Everything else is learning.
Yeah, I mean, Roccat is also sort of in a peculiar situation or position where it's not as enthusiast focused as, I don't know, Vaxi maybe, but also not as mainstream as, I don't know, Corsair. So it's sort of in between those polar opposites. And I figure balancing those most of the time conflicting demands is probably not that easy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the Kone Pro is an almost perfect example to what you just said. It's like trying to find this balance, because as you said, we couldn't just make a enthusiast only mouse. You need to sell mice as well, right? You can't just sell 10 units and call it a day. But in our position, we don't want to just make mainstream stuff. We don't just want to copy, let's say, what Corsair is doing and just pump out random mice. It sounds like of edgy, but like everyone working at Rockets like works there with their heart. It's really important to all of us to kind of satisfy people as well, to satisfy our customers. I mean, the Kone in Germany especially is like one of the best selling mice here, and we couldn't make a mouse that where people would go, yeah, what is that? We're not gonna buy that as our like big customers. But yeah, it's extremely tough to be in this situation sometimes as well. Especially, I mean, I come from the enthusiast community, right? I just want to make crazy stuff. I just want to make enthusiast stuff, and then you have to to deal with like mice with 14 buttons and 200 LEDs and 600 grams of weight, and you go like, all right, let's do this, but you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, recently you also have the demands and wishes of the Minecraft PvP community, who somehow discovered the suitability of the Kine series for drag clicking, right? And I mean, just skimming through YouTube comments for the Kone announcement video, I think out of 100 comments, at least 200 were about drag clicking, kind of drag click. So basically, the question is not whether it can drag click, but is this something you were basically taken by surprise? Like all of a sudden, Kai series just flying off the shelves because it's really good for drag clicking, and yeah, do you have your eyes on that market? Because it seems to be a fairly big market. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Hypixel server alone is like 150k players on a day. But so where do you start? Let's start with the Kane. So the Kane was like more of a silent launch, I think, and I think a lot of people still don't know about it. So it's suddenly exploding in sales, right? Is definitely surprising. The drag clicking wasn't surprising. I mean, at least to me, if you're in this community for a while and every day there's 10 people coming in, but can X mouse drag click? You kind of expect this thing to like be bigger. But personally, I wouldn't have expected the Kane to be like that product. And then also with the YouTube comments and or like generally social media comments on the Kone Pro launch about the drag clicking. I mean, I had to take like a break from internet for half a day. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it makes me sick. It's I guess that comes mostly from the fact that I see it every day anyways, like away from work even, right? It's just like joining Mouse Review Discord or something. It almost like pretty much became a meme, like asking about drag clicking, and now it's everywhere. Like you launch your product and you go like, I mean, I was nervous anyways to release this because I was the product manager for the product, right? And all you see is this drag clicking stuff. It's like it hurts almost, right? So I mean, but it's obviously something real. It's obviously something big, and I'm not gonna go out there and design a mouse just for drag clicking. But it's definitely something I'm interested in just exploring further. It's one of these things that I'm personally not interested in it, but it's still an interesting topic. It's still an important topic, so I'm gonna look into it. There's a few people that like dove a bit deeper trying to figure it out. There's still a lot of open topics, right? Like how drag clicking actually works, why is like the Kane, for example, such a good drag click mouse, and so on. The only answer I can give on the Kone Pro to all these YouTube comments, if it can drag click, is just I can't drag click, I can't test it. I've heard from one tester that has a Kone Pro who managed to drag click, and that's all I can say right now, to be honest. I mean, I'm hoping this thing can drag click and everyone will just go and buy it, and it's gonna be like the best selling mouse ever. But if that's what it takes, but yeah, for future releases, it's something I think every company has to keep in mind. This is something even Logitech has to take serious at this point, and look into how can we also make our mice drag clickable. It's not like we need to design drag click mice now, but if you release a mouse, it should also be able to drag click, I guess. Just my guess.
Would
Can you guys?
Yeah, sorry.
You can go ahead, Sokol.
Would you consider adding a line about drag click viability in specifications?
If it's proven, if it's like actually proven.
Yeah, if you did an investigation basically into drag clicking.
I think for marketing, for me, no. I'm all about actually calling facts and specs and not, because I think if you go out and like, oh, this mouse can drag click, by the way, it's obvious. It's very obvious marketing to me. It's not. It's a hard one because it could also be like a technical thing, I guess, at this point, right? We just simply don't. If we figure out, let's say the Kone Pro, it can drag click, it's amazing at drag clicking, I'm 100% sure that on our spec sheets and so on, there will be a line that says this mouse can drag click. I'm very certain, and I'm certainly not the only ones as well. I mean, over in China, Bloody is already using that as marketing. It's part of the marketing since like half a year. Yeah, it's just part of their strategy because they know it's a big market. In China, it's even bigger than here.
Even bigger.
It's even bigger than here. So yeah, I don't want to be in a Chinese mouse review server. I mean, it's gonna be rough. But yeah, it's gonna be part of marketing for sure.
Can you guys educate me a little bit on drag clicking? I mean, I know it's all about maximizing CPS basically, but from the technical standpoint, I guess you need something that has 0 millisecond debounce setting or something, or optical switches. But is there any other use case than is like Minecraft the only game that you see that there is a use case for drag clicking, or are there any other examples like for FPS games or MOBA games?
Go ahead.
All right. So as far as I figured that out, because that's why I was waiting for Sokol to say something, because I think he knows more about this than I do. It. As far as I know, Minecraft is pretty much the only thing drag clicking is used for. I heard from Kammyz, one of the AimLab guys, that it's also used in like I think Apex Legends or something, in a very like niche case for something. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, technical aspects, I think I have a grasp on it, but I think Sokol like can give you a better answer on that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like way back in Call of Duty 4 days and Black Ops 2, FAL, Modern Warfare 3, what was it called, M14 or something like that. I mean, those guns were semi-auto, and you had to spam click somewhat fast to get their file rate maxed out. But yeah, I mean, something like 10 clicks per second were perfectly sufficient to basically max them out. Actually, if you went faster, on some servers, you were just outright banned on COD4. So, and in Minecraft, apparently from what I understand, there is basically no limit. So if you do 40 clicks per second and the other guy does 50, the other guy will win basically, more or less. And you can't use macros, you can't use scroll wheel, you can't basically cheat. So you have to use drag clicking, to really max it out. And from what I understand, you want the time between button press and the next button press to be as low as possible in terms of debounce, and the same goes for button release. So if those two debounce values are really low, then it's really good for drag click. And then apparently the button themselves having low travel and a certain curvature is also conducive to drag clicking.
Yeah, so what I found out recently, actually, because I tried to like just a 3D print model of a shape, and the 3D print texture was the first texture ever that like kind of let me do this a similar thing like drag clicking. It was just a static model, but my finger did this drag clicking thing, I guess. And I think, I mean, you mentioned that the buttons have to be low travel, and I think that might be why the Kane is so good at it, because the Kane tolerances are insanely tight. It's one of the most complicated like click mechanisms ever designed. It's very, very, very low travel, very, very tight, and there is barely any curvature. And I heard, I don't know where I heard that. Maybe there was just some random thing, but I heard that like straight buttons, flat buttons are preferred for drag clicking, like long straight buttons. But as to the texture and or the coating or what exact angle the mouse needs to be at or the button needs to be at and what the switch weight has to be and so on, no idea. It's that's like this speculative spec still out there.
All right, yeah. Interesting. I don't see myself using it ever, and I think this is the most I want to know about drag clicking. So,
Well, yeah, I mean there's a great video just explaining it pretty well, I think, from Boyton. He kind of dug a bit deeper into the technical know-how. I think Psogo pretty much helped with those videos as well. So yeah, but again, I hate the topic. I hate the topic, but it's everywhere. You have to talk about it. There's no way around it anymore. Yeah.
I mean, Minecraft is pretty massive, I guess. So yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is.
All right, let's move on. We have one more question, then we'll go through for these newer releases of yours. But so, which releases by competitors have impressed you the most lately?
That's a tough one. So I thought about this actually for a while already, and I don't think there's any mouse overall that actually really impressed me. I was more hyped to buy the original like first release Death Adder than to like buy the latest Logitech Eraser mouse. There is a few things that I find to be impressive out there. For example, for the G Pro, what is it called again? G Pro X Superlight. The weight they achieved again, like they did already a benchmark with the G Pro Wireless, right? Now with the G Pro X, they achieved an even more insane weight with such a mouse. And to me, like opening up the mouse and looking at the engineering that went into that, it's like I have really mad respect for the engineers God damn it, Logitech has. The mechanical engineers Logitech has are just, they're doing unreal stuff. It's really far away from what everyone else has. And then also, I guess, generally Razer. I'm a big fan of Razer. I'm a big fan of the people working there. The Viper Mini was, to me, just really interesting. Was this realization of, okay, they made an Asia only product, and they brought it here, and it was received very well. Now it's one of the best selling mice out there. It's like this. Wow, it was unexpected, to be honest, but I'm very, very happy about it. What else?
By the way,
the Naga Pro, I think, was also very interesting to me. Like a wireless Naga. It was just very cool to me. I like the Naga Trinity quite a bit, and it was like a cool release, I guess. But really, like, impressed? I don't think so. Like, by nothing.
By the way, Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think, I said before, like since 2010 or something, the industry pretty much has stagnated. And since I'm more interested in the technical thing, the technical aspect of the whole hobby, and more of the like about shapes and so on, I find it more interesting to look at like the modding channel on my own Discord and look what people are doing than what like the mainstream is doing. There's not much going on in that respect or that regard. So
So yeah, I remember basically I don't have the Roccat Burst core, but was there like did any of them, was there like the idea of Viper Mini being so successful? Did it have anything behind the the idea to get this more of a budget friendly version of the Burst Pro to the market? I mean, I haven't tried it myself, but I've heard very good things about the Burst core in terms of like value for money what it provides.
I mean, spending less money on things is generally something people like to do, right?
Yeah.
If you can get a mouse for $20, $30, you're gonna buy it over one that is for $50, $60 that is almost the same. I think in that aspect the Viper Mini still is like a step in front of the Burst Core, because the Burst Core, I mean, it's $10 more expensive, I think, at least in US and Germany it's the same. But the specs of the Razer Mini are just a bit more impressive. They have like the pure PTV skates. They have the like shoelace cable. So the Viper Mini is just a really, really good balance, and the Burst Core, in my opinion, is just a good balance.
Okay.
It's good, but it's nothing impressive.
Yeah,
nothing special. Yeah.
All right.
Right, so I'm here, guys. Sorry for being late today. I got held up, but just in time, I think, to ask a question that I've been interested in for a while now. I've been a somewhat of a fan of Roccat products for a while. I remember the original Arvo keyboard had a Quake timer that was talked about for several months, and I'm quite a big fan of the design aesthetic in general, particularly on the software side of things. But when the sort of Kone Amo and the Covert Amo released, I thought it kind of went a little bit toward the nerdy side of things, angles and fins and things pointing out of areas where I didn't quite expect them to, we'll say. But as of recently, it started, I think, with the Kane 200 and then onto the Burst, and now with the Kone Pro AIr, things are sort of simplified a little bit toward a more muted aesthetic and something that is, at least for me, more pleasing toward the eye. And I kind of really like the sort of RGB and hexagonal shapes that are sort of peeking through. Was there an internal discussion regarding sort of the design aesthetic at Roccat and why we've kind of shifted toward this now? Because, as I say, I'm a big fan and I hope it continues.
All right. First of all, I'm impressed that you remember that far back. That's pretty cool. So, I mean, in general, we're always in discussion about design internally. There's always things we are like, because we like to try new things as well. But with the Kone Imo and now the Kone Pro, for example, imagine this. So there's, in the beginning, there was like just the cone, right? The big one, the big shape, which became the XTD and the EMP and later the IMO. But there was also the Kone Pure, which became the Kone Pure Oli, Kone Pure Ultra, right? Mm-hmm. So these were two product lines. The Pure, I mean, as the name implies, was always this much cleaner one, and then the other line, the Kone line, which now is the Kone Imo, is more of the like a lot of features, really cool looking RGB, and that's still the focus of it. So there will always be like a burst, like not a burst, like a pure lineup and an RGB lineup, let's say. The Kane was just something new, just Roccat trying something like very different. It was more focusing on click feeling, on like the general feel. It was just supposed to be this really nice handling mouse. So not much focus on RGB. The Burst the Burst Core, I mean, is very pure. Barely has any RGB, and then the Burst Pro actually has a lot of RGB. So it's kind of this mix, this kind of this in between things, right? It started out as a very pure mouse, right? Similar to the Core. But then we thought, like, okay, let's do something crazy, pretty much, right? Let's do something nobody else has done before. So I mean, Roccat products never had holes, right? We were always hiding the hexagonal holes. They were there because, I mean, they're for structure and so on. And then the Burst, we thought, okay, why not just show them? Because people like having holes in mice, but we don't like having actual holes in mice. So putting RGB behind this is quite a logical step, right? That's more or less how the Burst came to be, of the Burst Pro. So it's a very different approach in general. And now the Kone Pro released, right? And the Kone Pro is neither the Kone nor the Kone Pure. The original project name of the Kone was actually K1, right? I mean, Kone K1 because it's the one cone. The story behind it is, some time ago, like 2 to 3 years ago, a bit before my time, Roccat did a huge research. So in Korea, China, like, rented iCafes, invited like hundreds of testers all around the world, and the idea was to figure out like the perfect middle ground in shape and size of the cone. Like, what size do the most amount of people like? And imagine the Kone IMO is 100%, right? The big one is 100%. The Kone Pure is 91% of that, and the Kone Pro is 94 point something percent of that. So it's pretty much a third lineup now. So there's 3 different cones now. I think this is very confusing to a lot of people. A lot of people in the comments asked, this looks so different than the Kone IMO, or this looks so different than the Kone Pure, or oh, but why make the Kone Pure smaller? Why make the Kone IMO smaller? Other way around, but yeah.
But for me, it genuinely looks like it tries to take the best of everything, right? Like it try and fit the most hands. You've got a little bit of RGB lighting, but not too much.
Correct.
You've got corners, but not, over pronounced corners. It's curved. It's just sleek. It looks like the best of everything that hopefully will satisfy the majority of players. But obviously, as you say, there may be always people that might prefer the smaller one or the bigger one.
I mean, let me put it this way. If you like the smaller Kone Pure, or you like the bigger Kone IMO, we're not forgetting about you. It's not that this is not going to be our last release, right? I think a lot of people always act like that. If you release a new product, a lot of people act like, oh god, that's not for me, or the brand is dead. We think of everyone. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But yeah, the RGB on the Kone Pro it's also functional, by the way. The wireless one uses this as indicators. For example, there is a, I think that hasn't been talked about before, but there is a driverless setup mode for the Kone Pro and for the Kone Pro AIr. So you can set up the mouse like DPI, RGB as well, polling rates, lift off distance without software, just with the mouse. And there we use the RGB actually as indicators for the settings.
Oh, nice. That's something I'm sure Pizarro will be happier. We won't speak about the mouse at the moment, but you're not having the best of times with a certain piece of software.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of software in general, and I'm not a fan of the Swarm software either. So this came from me. Also, like, I mean, I saw what Soundkönig was doing, or I think Zowie more or less did, right, with the buttons, and I was like, okay, how can we make this just a bit more intuitive, and how can we put even more functionality in a driverless setup than just like setting up polling rate? So, but yeah, the RGB comes in handy there, definitely.
Cool, thank you.
All right,
yeah,
so let's go.
I guess real quick to summarize this question, because my answers are always a bit more than asked, but we always try new things. We always explore new design directions. we have an insanely cool design team. I really like working with them because it's just they always have cool ideas. It's always stuff to look at, and in the end, it's always something cool coming out. Even though I'm not a fan of the Kone, to me, it's just an interesting design. So there's always something cool coming.
One question, actually, just before we move on. Why the Roccat logo in text and not the tiger? Is it a tiger? I don't know. What actually is it?
It's a cat, I guess. I don't know what exactly it's supposed to be. Coming from the name, I would guess it's a cat. I was actually curious why nobody asked the question. So the idea is, there's this. We have this performance lineup with the Compure, right? Or the burst is more performance oriented. While the Kone is more like about the RGB and functionality and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of people that like the RGB and a lot of buttons and so on, they really like the Roccat logo for some reason, right? They really like it. So let's give them that. They can keep it with the Kone and so on. And even future releases that are similar will probably have the head as well. But the font, just having the font on the Burst Pro and the Kone Pro, we thought it's just a bit cleaner. Right, it helps the product look a bit cleaner.
Yeah, I can agree with it.
I think it's subjective. There's a lot of people that don't like it. There's a lot of people that like it. Personally, on the Kone, I love it because it's actually like a silver foil hot stamp. So it's actually like an actual foil hot stamped in, and it's all shiny and looks cool, and it's like this designer piece, really, right? But yeah, that was the general idea. Subjective. I like it. Some don't. I'm not a fan.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But it is what it is, really. Yeah.
Cool. I'm sorry, Kammyz.
It's all right. So yeah, what's the reason? I mean, I pretty much know this, but I don't know this, but I'm guessing. But I've seen a lot of people ask, what's the reason for you guys to go basically make your first lightweight wireless mouse as the Kone from the Kone series and not the Burst series? But I mean, I guess this whole project has started before even the Burst Pro has been released. But is there another reason, or what's the kind of thinking behind that?
Okay, so both projects were more or less in parallel, actually. I'm not gonna say there will be a wireless Burst Pro. I'm not gonna say there won't be one. But for the Kone Pro, just really made sense. A lot of people asked about the wireless Kone forever. There's always been people asking for a wireless Kone, and that was just a logical step to take. We had this kind of wireless first mindset. Let's make the wireless first, and then come up with the wired. The wireless is more important here. Wireless to me is the logical like next step in mice, right? Wires will disappear at some point.
Yeah.
And it's part of this performance. Why do we have 20k DPI now? Man hurts to say this, but I mean, yeah, it's marketing, but it's also this like push for like more performance, right? That's the same thing with this, and the Kone Pro is all about performance, right? It's all about the performance, so it just made sense here. With the Burst, you have this RGB, like very bright RGB going on as well, right? Now imagine putting this into wireless. That's a tougher task than doing two RGBs that you can kind of hide a bit as well and dim more, right? To save some battery time. So not gonna say it's impossible. I mean, but I can't really give an answer as to why exactly. But the main reason is just the Kone Pro made more sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
At least from the outside looking in, like the Kone is the iconic mouse, at least as far as I'm concerned, for Roccat. So having it as the first wireless one kind of makes sense in that sense as well. And on top of that, I think, at least to the best of my knowledge, it's one of the only mice with a thumb groove that might do wireless write as well to start with. I mean, I've not tried it, but I can only assume. So it's quite unique in that sense, whereas getting I mean, everyone at this point has at least modded an ambidextrous shape into a wireless using like G305 internals or whatever. So
yeah. There's at least 3 KPU wireless that I'm aware of, but yeah, I mean, there's thousands of FKs and yeah.
By the way, since you've mentioned wires eventually disappearing, is 8,000 hertz something you'd want to do at some point?
So, I mean, obviously, I don't think it's a spoiler, but we obviously also looked into that, and it just really doesn't make much sense right now. It's a cool gimmick, and it's again, it's an obvious next step. Polling rate will go up. It's the only way to get more out of your mouse, right? It just doesn't really work right now. I'm happy that Razer tried it, but I don't really want to follow right now. And as for wireless, I'm 99.5% sure that 8K will be possible with wireless as well. There is some technical difficulties, some technical steps that have to be done or taken in order to achieve it. But it's not something where I would go like, oh yeah, maybe in 500 years, you know. So I'm thinking in the next 2, maybe 3 years, we will see higher polling rates with wireless as well. I'm not just talking 2K, I'm talking like 4K, 8K.
Yeah, I've heard pretty much the same. I mean, regarding 8K, I haven't heard much, like even like guesses or anything like that. But 2K, 4K, people say that 2 to 5 years we should see that happening. But yeah, it will be interesting to see.
I mean, I've been meaning to do the benchmarks for a while now, but I was thinking actually yesterday, it's funny you brought it up, that I'm quite particular when it comes to running even more than one webcam at a high resolution, because I know it's going to add to my CPU usage, which still is a ridiculous Ryzen 9, by the way, but in turn, it's still going to reduce my frames. And then I was thinking, I would love an 8,000 hertz Death Adder, which is obviously my main at the moment. But would I actually use it at 8,000 hertz when I saw the FPS hit that might be there? I mean, I've not actually, like I say, sat down and looked at the impact myself on my system, but it's certainly been on my mind recently. So it's something I'm going to play with for sure.
Yeah, so for me, I don't have the latest high-end system. It's still a decent processor, but for me, 8K polling rate didn't reduce frames so much, but there's so many issues in games. Like a lot of engines can't handle it. Windows itself sometimes just goes like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? For Linux, it highly depends. Like on a laptop, it just outright doesn't work. The cursor won't move. It just says no, I'm not gonna deal with that. So there's this all of these small issues and all of these things that have to be fixed first, I think.
Yeah, it's funny as well. It's not polling rate related, but it's maybe interesting for someone listening in. Obviously, I have a 360 hertz display now, and I stream as well and do a lot of recording. Obviously, Counter-Strike a while back, they removed the ability to game capture in OBS. So if you have the higher refresh rate is, if you start using desktop capture in OBS, you get less frames in game because just your sort of FPS is reduced based on your refresh rate. So I was using 360 hertz and I couldn't work out why my FPS was so low, and then it finally clicked that I was losing frames because of that. So another fun topic to maybe think about if someone listening is in the market for 360 hertz display that's maybe not all smooth sailing. Maybe we have to do an episode on that sometime in the future.
Yeah.
I think in general, new tech is always like this. There's very rarely new tech that just works perfectly. I mean, just look at the first iPhone. There were so many issues, but nowadays it's like it's the smartphone, right?
Yeah, you go there if you don't want issues now with apps, right?
I mean, let's not talk about that, but the idea the idea works, right? Every technology just takes time. Someone needs to invest into it, someone needs to push it, and then
The funny thing about 8K is also that, I mean, we don't really know what's the main issue. I mean, it's so system specific, it seems. I mean, with my system, I got a quite old system, and Soul's system, I mean, you have like prehistoric
Ancient.
system.
Yeah.
Ancient system. And
yeah, and I have
basically,
zero issues, zero
yeah, same
in any
here.
game.
Yeah. And then NVC, you have like really, really new system, and there are issues. I mean, yeah, it's so random, and I'm not sure even if people at Razer know what's the main issue.
No,
I mean,
they
I would
don't.
assume they.
Fiend stated that they have no idea as well.
Yeah.
I read
Yeah.
a post someone said disable AMD game services and it will fix my issues. I need to try it. Something to do with the process, but very must be
But
very
then
difficult to get to the bottom of.
I don't have that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? it's the pixies.
But it's really interesting that it did not come up in testing. I mean, it's pretty much 100% certain that Razer does quite extensive testing when they come out with new technology. I mean, pretty much everybody has to do this, of course. But so what happened like between the prototypes and stuff? Yeah, interesting to know. I mean, if there were some Windows updates or something, I don't know. I don't really know, and I guess nobody does. But yeah, interesting anyway. But all right, let's get back to the sort of the Kone Pro and the Kone Pro AIr. I mean, the reception has been sort of kind of mixed in regards of the pricing of the mice. I guess it's been mostly negative. Were you surprised by this at all?
Yes, I am, to be honest. I mean, every wireless mouse, like high performance wireless mouse that released in the last years, was launched 150 USD, right? A wired mouse for $80 isn't too uncommon. I can get more behind that. Like $80 for a wired mouse can be a lot of money, but then keep in mind what actually is in the mouse. I think what's missing here is someone like Sogol opening it up and looking at it and going, then you will probably understand why we had to ask for some more money. But for the wireless, I was very certain, like right before release, I was like, people are gonna go crazy. They go like, oh, it's $20 less than a G Pro wireless with the like same specs, and I mean the weight isn't the best, right? It's 74 grams, which isn't the like 60 or sub 60 that Logitech can achieve. But then again, if you go with, but it's heavier, then look at it. It's bigger and it's a asymmetric shape. I talked about this briefly before, but so asymmetric shapes are much more difficult to do in manufacturing. Because with a lot of curves or like different curves, and especially with the thumb groove, it's very difficult to make a tooling and get it out of the tooling and so on. You have to have thicker walls. You have need support structure and so on. I'm still really impressed by the Burst Pro AIr, the way it ended up. For the
Lighter
size
than my
it
Death
has.
Adder.
I mean, it's. I think it's even a bit. I think it should have a bit more volume than the Death Adder even. I mean, of course, it also has a much higher focus on lightweight than the Death Adder, to be fair. But yeah, I'm really looking forward for the first reviews. I'm really looking forward what people think when they get it in their hands. I mean, I think the price is justified. In that regard. And there's also people saying like, yeah, but Roccat is this like indie brand. Indie brands can't ask a lot of money. Like Glorious is asking only $100 for their wireless or something. I think a lot of people forget that Roccat is one of the biggest brands in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're an indie brand. We're definitely a newer brand than US, to be fair. But in Europe, we are pretty big. But yeah, let's see what people think when they get it in their hands. Let's see if they think it's justified or not. Maybe I'm totally wrong here. I'm not gonna say I'm always right about these things. This is just my opinion on the price. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, just to interject here, having not used a Roccat mouse, I don't know how long now, but I look at the specs. Unlike a lot of the other mice that cost more, you've got the option here of using Bluetooth, right? So if you have two PCs for streaming, you can connect it to your second PC on Bluetooth or use it on a laptop with Bluetooth whilst using the 2.4 gigahertz for gaming. You've got your optical switches, which aren't on all the other wireless mice as well. Again, I've not tried them, so that's just talking based on the spec, but on paper, they should be as fast, if not faster. You got USB Type-C, which a lot of people demand for some reason. I don't really see a need or not need for it. It is what it is. Looking at the price, I think it's justified. So the only thing I'm worried about, and not worried, is those side buttons look chonky. I'm very curious to see what they're going to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's above the thumb grip, though, but
They are chunky, and they are a mechanical engineer nightmare because they don't have a frame around them. They're difficult to mount, but they're nice compared to the Compure ones, because the Compure ones, a lot of people say like, I can't even find them. I can't even click them.
Yeah.
I have quite big hands. They never got in my way, and they're really nice to use, so I'm happy with them. And it's so far from all of our testers and like my colleagues, I haven't heard anyone complaining about them. So yeah, again, I'm really looking for people to try them, because that's also something like, let's see what people think. It's similar to the Burst, by the way. In terms of size. But yeah, for the Bluetooth, actually, I was like, okay, we had the Bluetooth, right? We're using like the latest Nordic chipset, if that rings a bell for you. Like, it's just a very, very new Nordic chipset, and it comes with Bluetooth anyways. So we're like, okay, let's just use it as well. It's nice to have. And I was like, who needs that? Every one of my colleagues uses this mouse, and a lot of us have like a work laptop and then a gaming PC or something. My boss, for example, my close colleague and they tell me, this is the best feature ever. Like, I can't use mice that don't have the switching feature. It's so nice. I can just switch between PCs. I'm like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's actually a cool thing to have. Yeah, I get that. And as for the USB-C, there's no reason to not have it. It's more expensive, but it's not enough to warrant not having it. It has the benefit that you don't need a proprietary plug to keep it in secure, because USB-C secures itself quite well. So the Burst Pro AIr actually takes whatever USB cable you throw at it, as long as it's USB-C.
Okay.
Right, you can order some paracord or something for Amazon. It will fit. We made sure of that. And with the USB micro, for example, it's more difficult to do. It's possible, but it's way more difficult to do. And that's USB-C is the latest standard. It's like this thing like, why would you use a laser sensor, right? Because it's kind of outdated. Everyone uses opticals now, and it's but USB-C becomes very similar as well.
So you don't agree with my Final Mouse and their reason in terms of micro USB?
What was the reasoning?
It's just weight. They said weight, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You save weight with USB micro, because you don't need this huge USB-C board. But if you talk about like 0.2 grams, 0.3 grams, if you want to save that amount of weight, yes. But to me, the benefit of it is bigger than the weight. Unless you are like Soundkönig, who are pushing like for the last milligram, right? There's no reason to not go USB-C.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I know why Final Mouse went USB micro. That has to be seen. I don't want to comment on that until I've seen the mouse, but it's not a valid reason in my opinion. No.
All right. I mean, in my opinion, the Kone Pro AIr is, so yeah, I think this is the $130 is pretty much justified. I mean, especially if the wireless implementation is good. But we'll have to wait for Psogel's test on that one. But yeah, so if it's good, I don't see any issue with the price at all. I mean, basically all the Roccat mice that I've had, the Kone Pro Live was my first Roccat mouse, Kone Ultra, Roccat Burst Pro. The build quality is very, very good, so it's pretty much top notch. So yeah, I mean, if that continues with this one, the price is completely justified. And I do agree with your colleagues that Bluetooth is insanely nice if you work from home like myself. So yeah, having my Death V2 Pro was my first Bluetooth wireless mouse that was meant for gaming as well, and I hate the mouse mouse shape and stuff, but I just wanted to use it just because it's so nice to have just one mouse on my desk.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As for build quality, I mean, we really try to achieve tight tolerances. We after every production phase, we test the mice. We look even for the smallest details. We annoy our engineering team with every every even smallest detail that maybe sometimes they don't matter, right? For example, the mouse wheel of the Pro Air, the Pro, it's an aluminium mouse wheel, and in the beginning it had like rather sharp edges, and I mean, until we arrived at the mouse wheel it has now, it took some time because every single last detail is important. I guess that's just kind of what makes Rocket as well. I mean, yeah, the whole German engineering is a bit I mean, BS, right? Obviously, everyone manufactures in China. Our head of engineering is actually German, so it's not a lie, by the way. It's actually German engineering. But I think the message that's the message of German engineering is just quality has to be on point, otherwise we can't sell it.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the Kone Pro. I mean, I think the discussion about the price is a little bit more like relevant in this case. I mean, when we look at the Burst Pro, it was $60 on launch, right? And this one is $80, and looking at the features, it seems to have pretty much the same features. So I guess the discussion here is a little bit more relevant. So what do you think is are the main factors why we should consider, what the consumer should consider buying an $80 wireless mouse, and why is this like $20 more than the Burst Pro?
Okay, so let's start with the last point. So it's more expensive because it costs more for the end consumer because it costs more for us. The mechanical part of the Kone Pro is much more difficult. It's insanely difficult to do this shape. The specs are very, very similar, right? They get close. A bit more DPI, which I mean, for an enthusiast doesn't really matter. For mainstream, it does. The design is very different as well. I think these two mice talk to very different people, and they address very like two different market needs, I guess. So the price really just, it's not because we're greedy and we want more money. I mean, everyone wants more money, but it's we have to hit margins, right? If a mouse costs us more in production, we have to ask them more as well, and it costs more because it's just a better mouse, at least in theory, right? And on paper, and whatever's on paper, you have to pay for, right?
Yeah. How's the coding on these Pro series mice, by the way? Because the Kone Pure Ultra has like this really insanely high quality feeling coding, but then the Burst Pro coding, some people have issues with it. I don't have issues with it myself, but it definitely does not feel as premium as the Kone Pure Ultra, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So on the Burst Pro, the sides have like a texture. It depends more on the texture than on the coating. The Kone Pro went more back to the direction of the Kone Pure Ultra. It's not the same because the Kone Pure Ultra is a coating that you have to bake at a high temperature, and with a wall thickness as thin as the Kone Pro has, the mouse was just like it would shrink or would deform in the baking process. So using that coating sadly isn't possible, even though we would like to. But we have a coating that comes pretty damn close, right? It's still rather fingerprint resistant, not as good as the Kane and the Kone Pure Ultra, I'm gonna be honest here, but it's fine. It's nothing special, but it's also nothing bad. It's a pretty decent coating.
All right. Good to know. Sokol NVC, do you have any additional questions?
No question. Just something I just noticed on the official Roccat side. It says PMW 3370, and it should read PAW. Yeah, so might want to get this addressed like really quickly.
Do you want to know fun facts? Don't look for my issues on the Roccat.com website. You will find a lot. Let me check real quick if the oh, it's not on there anymore. Sad. So according to the website, the Kone Pro Ultra had a 8000 DPI laser sensor and some really weird marketing name for the switches. I think that was taken from like a COVA, like an early COVA or something. There might be a few mistypes on the website. But yeah.
It happens.
Where does it say that on the tech specs down below? Right?
Yeah, technical specs and sensor.
I think that's what's beautiful about 2021 though, is it's so difficult to buy a mouse that has a terrible like sensor or terrible buttons. Like you get something that's slightly better or slightly worse, but it's not like 2012 where you had a 75% chance of getting a mouse that had smoothing at lower DPI steps and all that kind of stuff. I like where we're at.
Yeah, as I said that earlier, like for me, the whole industry pretty much stagnated from like starting 2010. After 2010, nothing really happened besides sensors just going to a state where we don't have to think about them anymore, which is, as I said, really nice. You don't have to go like buy a mouse and then figure out how much angle snapping does it have, how much whatever does it have, right? I mean, I love looking through old ES reality threads and stuff, right? 2007, and just looking at people, watching people going like, oh, this mouse has like angle snapping. This doesn't even exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
We're in a good place in that term. Yeah.
NVC is the only one in the world who's still asking for an option for angle snapping.
I need to pull out my XM1R. It's time. I've got all my other reviews out the way pretty much. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing the Pulsar one, but I broke that in my pre-release sample, so I can't do that. I've got an Outset AX to do, and I want to get the XM1R and have angle snapping a proper go, just so I can get it out of my head. Yeah.
I'm actually interested if you will like the Outset AX. So yeah, will be interesting to check out your review. I mean, I guess Sokol liked it quite a bit, and I liked it quite a bit. So it will be fun to see if a guy who like mains an ergonomic mouse. So
well, the thing is, I think that new one you've got, is it the NP01S?
Yeah.
That actually looks more suitable for me than the Outset. So I'm a little bit sad that I'm reviewing this one and not that one, but we'll see. Interesting for sure.
All right, then. I mean, Elin, do you have something you still want to talk about, or shall we wrap up the episode?
I mean, I'm just really looking forward to the feedback on this mouse, on the Kone Pro. But I'm also really looking forward to just generally what other products are coming out this year, because I'm kind of still hoping for this one mouse that changes the game, not like Final Mouse is trying to do it, but like actually, do something new, like just, I don't know, try something crazy, because otherwise I'm kind of getting bored of this whole market in that term, right? I mean, I still love like making mice, I still love collecting them and so on. It's just, yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it sounds a bit depressing. Don't want to end up on that note, but yeah.
I mean, I have like
Razor, if you're listening, just do more crazy things, please. Thank you.
I have like one kind of final question touching on, you spoke about looking for feedback and things like that. Yeah. I know a few years ago there was, I think, Team Roccat. You had like an LCS team for a while, and I think eventually that sort of dissolved and a lot of people went over to, it might have been Rogue. Does Roccat currently sponsor any teams, and are you able to take feedback from those sponsor teams? Because I can't remember the last time I saw a Roccat leak. Most things like they come out at the time they're supposed to come out?
We are sponsoring some League of Legends, like some big League of Legends event, but no teams right now. I think.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. I think that there is some team, because this is more marketing PR.
Of course,
to be honest, it's quite far away from. I think there is some team that we actually sponsor right now.
I have to take a look. Yeah, I was just curious because I know some other companies can. I mean, it's different kind of feedback, right? From different kind of areas. You know, pro players might not give the same feedback as an enthusiast. Enthusiasts won't give the same feedback as a casual. So I was just curious if you had access to any pro players that.
We have access. We have access to some pro players in general. We sponsor people like Dr. Savage, Dr. Disrespect, and Mr. Savage. That way.
Oh, of course, I remember the videos.
We have Ben Fishy or something he's called, Fortnite player. I don't remember the names, but we sponsor some people, and we talk to them as well and get their feedback on products.
Sure.
I mean, usually in these sponsoring is more like, yeah, cool product, it's cool, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's more difficult to get really harsh feedback as well. But yeah, we're sponsoring Genji. So Genji is some I think Korean team that do like Overwatch, League of Legends, PUBG. So that might be interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
As you mentioned future products, have you looked at the Rocket Jump Ninja mouse or the Extra for MC1, and what are your thoughts on that?
I have to be careful here. The shape looks interesting. I'm just looking at it. I'm going like, yeah, that's not gonna be nice. But I have been surprised before by really weird shapes, right? So I'm looking forward to trying it. Definitely. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like the design though. Like the holes are really weird. I think it's really cool that just like a guy like Zai just goes like doing a partnership production, I guess, and just makes a weird mouse, like a weird shape that just fits him, right? I think that's pretty cool, actually. I would love to see more of that. But yeah, let's see how it turns out.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how like the fingertip grippers, I guess, mostly will feel about that mouse, and maybe some claw grippers as well, because it seems to be quite clearly designed like towards his own like opinions and his own preferences. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how well it is received by the community.
It's a weird one for me, because he started off using a Death Adder like me, and then he gradually went to other mice. So I think like it's a culmination of his entire sort of path through finding his perfect small mouse. So I'm also curious. It doesn't look like the shape that fits me, being the sort of the big heavy-handed palm gripper, but I'm still curious since he started where I started in a way.
Oh, I didn't know that he did like the Death Adder. Okay.
Yeah, he went downhill, but that's what it is.
All right, but I guess that was it for this episode. I mean, we talked for quite a while, and interesting topics and good discussion. Thank you, Elin, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. That was great fun.
Yeah, let's do it again once you like release more products and stuff. Yeah, so
there will be more coming this year already. Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
There's actually one topic I'm not sure who I think we see you started that about the mouse pads.
Yeah, I actually have, and then I have one final comment to leave you, or rather a request or probably demand, but I'll just quickly touch on it then.
Okay, should I be scared?
It's definitely demand. Okay, starting with mouse pads. I can't help but notice all of your cloth mouse pads are really just stupidly cheap. I have to assume there's going to be something new coming, or I mean, why is the Kanga so cheap? Have you explored like maybe Kodora or just bigger and more expensive premium surfaces, or is the Kanga a premium surface and it's just priced stupidly low? I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, it's actually worth millions. Just have too much money. No, I mean, mousepads, I don't think it's a secret anymore. Mousepads are generally like you ask a supplier for something and you get it, more or less. Even Artisan does the same thing. The Kanga is just a very inexpensive mousepad in general to produce as well. It's more of this. Do you need a mousepad? Yes. What mousepad? Yes. Okay, take the Kanga.
Okay.
So I mean, we have more interesting stuff like the Taito control, and but that's about it right now. I mean, some people might know before I started Roccat as well, I really got into mousepads. I have too many mousepads in my room still, way too many, and I really fell deep into the whole mousepad in the mousepad hole before I started. And when I finally started, I got the idea. Hey, the Roccat mousepad portfolio looks kind of lacking. Let's do something about it.
So something coming maybe in future.
I've worked really hard on this whole thing. I mean, yeah, there will be something. There will come something. I can't tell you when, and I can't tell you what. I want to tell you. I think you're gonna be really happy, and a lot of people also in the community will be really happy with what is gonna come. I think with any other comments, I have to be careful what I say. But yeah, there is something in the works. You will be happy, I hope. And yeah.
Sure, I will leave that with a request, and that is a very minimalistic logo. Either just the text or the Roccat head would be perfect.
I will have to DM you after this podcast.
That would be awesome.
Because I think I can make you happy.
That's good to hear. And my final request, and it's not a question, it's just a request. I've reviewed so many wireless headsets or used so many wireless headsets at this point. Being a streamer that has a Go XLR on my desk, and also knowing several streamers that have 2 PCs, every single wireless headset beyond maybe one that I can think of has a USB dongle with no 3.5 millimeter auxiliary input. So if you want to route audio from a mixer or from a second PC, you have to do audio repetition in Windows. You can't just plug a 3.5mm cable into the dongle. So if somewhere in the Roccat product development team they're considering a new wireless headset, please consider, for the love of God, a 3.5mm auxiliary input cable, and be like one of the first companies to actually go all in on it. It would be lovely.
Honestly, I have no idea about headsets. That's
okay.
mostly handled from the television side, because they obviously know how to make.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Then I will find the email for them.
As wireless headsets, I like, even if I knew I even if I could, I can't tell you because I don't know.
Yeah, fair.
maybe not. No clue. But I get your problem. Yeah, I understand your problem. But
I'm just on a personal mission now. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
angle snapping's done. This is my new one.
I can check. And when it releases, I can tell you. But man, I don't know, honestly.
All right. It was worth checking.
Well, asking never hurts. No.
Yeah, and that's it. I've got nothing else.
All right, let's wrap up. Yeah. Again, thank you, Elin, for joining us. Thank you guys for listening, and yeah, see you in the next episode.